Hello again, everybody. This is the Metroidvania Guru with part 9 of the ultimate definitive Metroidvania tier list. I know this is part 9, but I'm just going to give the lowdown for any newbies. Basically, I take 3 Metroidvanias and I talk about them in length. I do each game's pros, cons, spoilers if necessary, and then finish with some final thoughts before actually placing them on the tier list. Every game for every episode is chosen by a randomized picker. If you don't see a particular game on the tier list, it's because it hasn't been chosen yet. We'll get to all of them eventually. It's a tall order, but I think I can eventually do it. Sometimes before I get into an episode's games, I like to take a look at the list and do some amendments. And these amendments usually come from me taking a look at the list and having some second thoughts or feedback from the community. And on this episode's amendments, I wanted to take a look at the 2 Shantae games in the B tier, Seven Sirens and Pirate's Curse. I replayed a little bit of Seven Sirens, not like all the way through, which I probably will play it all the way through eventually, and soon. But having went in there and actually taken a look at the game again, I'm actually comfortable with leaving Seven Sirens where it is. Pirate's Curse, on the other hand, I think needs to be lowered. Specifically because that game's, it is a Metroidvania, but it does this kind of like weird level-based structure, and it has like a hub and everything, and you choose the level you want to go to. I think that hurts its Metroidvania-ness just a little bit. Now, I completely understand everyone loves Pirate's Curse, and a lot of Shantae fans will tell you it's the best one in the series. I'm not saying they're wrong. What I'm saying is it just doesn't fit the Metroidvania mold as well as, say, Seven Sirens. Or other games, in fact. And that's not to say I'm just, lowering it just because of the level structure. There are other factors within Pirate's Curse that I think just doesn't make it as strong a Metroidvania as it should be. And again, I do love the game. I just think it just needs to be lowered just a little bit. And I think it needs to go down to, still going to be a B tier game, but I think I'm going to put it below Vernal if I can. There we go. Yeah, because Vernal's kind of a level-based game as well too. You explore and you go to different islands and stuff. So I think they're pretty similar, although I think Vernal has a lot better exploration, and I do like its level select, quote unquote, a little better than Shantae's. Shantae's is more streamlined and easy, but Vernal's exploration, or its like level select, is it adds a little mystery to things going on and a lot of world building. But anyway, that's the amendments. I think I've rambled on enough, so let's go ahead and get started, huh? All right, first up we have Timespinner. I actually did a long-form video on this Metroidvania analysis. I'll put the link up top in a card if you're interested. So yeah, Timespinner. Let's start with the pros. First pro I have is that it has good combat. I say the combat's good because it's serviceable. It didn't blow my mind, but I did like it. I liked the sphere system. And what the sphere system was is like, what's her name? Luneus. She can essentially hold orbs in each hand, or really they float, but whatever. And she can attack with them. And when she attacks, she sends like 1 orb at a time, right? So you can like press them in succession and, hit with orb after orb after orb. It feels good, it looks good. And I appreciated how you could, put in 2 different orbs in a set. Like, I can't think of any of the orbs off the top of my head, but there's like a blue orb and there's a green orb. The blue orb, you just kind of like send out and hit somebody. And the green orb turns into a sword that like does an overhead swing to hit something. And you could put on 2 green orbs and do 2 sword attacks, or you could, switch it up and do a blue and a sword attack, whatever. I don't know why you would do that. Maybe there's some meta or there's something where people are like, oh yeah, if you equip this orb and you hit, you do more damage or something like that. I don't know. I honestly don't care. And that's why I said I appreciate it. I love the option to do it. I just don't know of any like practical reasons why you would switch up orbs as opposed to having like a dual set. But mixing up orbs aside, all the different orbs that Luneus could use were pretty cool. I remember this eyeball one that was like basically like a chain, or no, like a buzzsaw or something. That was kind of cool. And each orb has like an accompanying necklace that you can use, and that dictates what kind of magic spell you're going to use. And so each new orb has the potential to have a brand new magic spell, and some of these spells are really cool. My favorite was the green orbs magic. It basically you charge it up and then you release the button, and then this huge sword like just comes down on the screen. That was pretty much the orb I used the entire game because like there's no dodging that move. The enemies are absolutely getting hit with it because it just takes the whole screen, man. And you're incentivized in the game to continually use the same orb. Like, I would switch orbs every once in a while, but like, your orbs would level up as you use them. So please correct me if I'm wrong in that. It's been a minute since I played the game, but I do believe that's the case. But yes, orb usage is what dictates the experience of the orb, as well as finding these materials and using them to, you know, basically go to like a blacksmith and update them. I think that was the case as well, or although you might just get the materials and just use them to get new spells with the necklaces. Actually, scratch that. It's like coming to my head now. It's basically, you could get these, I can't even remember what the material is or what these things were, but you could go to this quote unquote blacksmith. Her name was Nell. And you'd give Nell the material and it would just boost the level of the orb. But you could also boost the orb's level by using it. So again, incentivized to use the same orb over and over and over again. And so because of that, I just use the green sword orbs because that magic spell, again, you're hitting whoever's on the screen when you use it. It's fantastic. All right, let's move on to the next pro, which is gorgeous visuals. My only real complaint with the visuals, because I'm about to just gush on them, but if I had to give you one complaint of the visuals, it's that the color palette is muted, which really isn't a pro or a con. It's a subjective thing on my part. But yeah, I just wish the colors were a little brighter, that's all. Other than that, like slight nitpick, everything else the game has to offer in the visual department is top tier. The pixel work, the backgrounds, just the everything, it looks amazing. Honestly, the game looks like something that Square Enix or Squaresoft or Enix would have made back in the 16-bit era. Like, I could have found this game for my Super Nintendo. It feels like an old school Super Nintendo game. And believe me when I say that's a compliment. And I think it's only natural, if we're talking about the gorgeous visuals, we should move on to the next pro, and that's the amazing soundtrack. I will say nothing in particular like comes to mind when I think of Timespinner's soundtrack, but I remember it being very Castlevania-esque, which again is a very good compliment. And though I don't think anything particularly stood out, I still remember it being very good. Like, I was playing the game and whatever atmosphere it had to like create or whatever, or enhance, or whatever tone it was trying to get across, it did a good job. And it just sounded so good. Again, it was very reminiscent of like Super Nintendo, although probably a little higher quality than the Super Nintendo, but it just sounded like something that I could have gotten from Squaresoft back in the day. It's just absolutely fantastic. The next pro I have is that the game has interesting world building. Now, there's some cons to this too, and we'll get to that in the cons section, but just strictly talking about the world that was built in Timespinner, I was super intrigued. Like, there's time travel, there are demons, there's, you know, planets and interplanetary travel, there's an empire, and then there's, you know, the resistance, and then there's ambiguity between both, like, you know, moral scales. This is a pretty cool story, pretty great world that's being built. But it's not perfect, and again, when we get to the cons section, you better believe I'll get back to it. But yes, again, overall, the world that Timespinner builds, I'm highly interested in. Okay, this next pro is going to sound kind of ironic if you've, you know, watched my analysis of the game or listened to my cons here in a minute. But I truly believe that this game has some organic characterization through side quests. Each side quest in the game revolves around one of the main characters in, like, I don't even know, like the hub area or the base or whatever you want to call it. And you basically do something for them, probably a fetch quest or kill X amount of monsters or find a thing and bring it back or something like that. And the reason to do this thing is usually personal, and it gives you some insight into that side character. And so you get the request, you learn a little bit as to, you know, why it's important to that character. And then you do the thing and you come back and you get a little bit more characterization from that character, whether it be about, you know, the dynamic of the world or just relationships in general. It was actually done pretty well. And like I said, when we get to the cons, this is going to seem silly to have said all that, but I really do believe that the side quests in this game, they lend a lot to the character's characterization, if you will. My next pro is about the fast travel. Timespinner's fast travel is outstanding. It's basically like the loading hallways from Symphony of the Night. So when you first find fast travel waypoints, you don't think that's what they are. They literally look like a loading screen from Symphony of the Night. But once you get a particular item, you can then start using these waypoints to fast travel, and you can move not just all over the map, but also between time periods. Like I said earlier, this is a time travel game, so there's two periods that you're going back and forth from, the past and the present. And I think the devs did a really good job of basically taking all these waypoints and making them fast travel points as well as time period
points. I don't know how best to say it, but they did a great job of making that. And these fast travel points are all over the map and almost always near a point of interest. So not a whole lot of backtracking if you don't want to do actual like backtracking on foot. All right, my next pro is kind of one that's hard to explain, but I'll do my best. And that's that this game has excellent pacing. And I know there might be some people out there that could, argue against this, but just hear me out. In my analysis of this game, I likened it to a page turner. And that's because there's always something going on or some sort of progression that's happening. And it all happens just so quickly. And this quickness is, exacerbated because you can use these fast travel points. And using these fast travel points, you can get stuff done, really quickly. And I think because how the game tracks your side quests in the menu with those little dots or balls or whatever, seeing those fill up and just knowing exactly how much you have to fill up, I don't know, it feels good in my brain. And so here I am doing side quests, doing the main game, doing everything and doing backtracking, which is just like smooth like butter because those travel points are everywhere. I don't know, it just feels great. Like you never feel like you have downtime. You're always moving, you're always progressing something. And it just makes for an overall experience that just goes by faster than you'd want it to, which doesn't sound like a compliment, but I assure you it is. And the last pro I want to talk about is the true ending. I'm not going to go into it. Maybe I'll talk about it in the spoilers, but when it comes to the true ending, I thought the path to it was done very well for a couple of reasons. One, it was logical, and which is kind of rare in this game, but we'll get to that in the cons. And two, you can figure it out yourself, which is always excellent in a Metroidvania. And what I mean by figure it out yourself is essentially you have to get these MacGuffins. And the search for these MacGuffins is never explicitly given to you. Like there's no objective marker or no characters tell you to do it. You just kind of explore and figure it out yourself. And I just appreciated that. Now, once you start this journey and get the first MacGuffin, then the game kind of explicitly tells you what to do. But just being able to start this journey of your own volition and without any hand-holding, I thought it was great. All right, and that brings us to the cons. And unfortunately, despite all the great things I've said about this game, the cons are pretty bad. So bad that I'd argue it brings the experience down pretty significantly. So the first thing I have is the dialogue in this game is just bad. Like it was written by teenagers or something. And that's a little unfair because not all the dialogue is bad, but where it is bad, it's bad. The first thing that gets me is just how some of these characters are portrayed, specifically the Emperor. He's the Emperor. He's supposed to be this kind of like imposing figure, this scary tyrannical like dude, right? And then you finally meet him and basically you guys are having this kind of exchange, and his answer to one of your spiteful comments is whatever, which is like something my teenage daughter would say to me. It's out of place, it's awkward, it messes up the tone, and you're just like, really you're gonna have this dude just say whatever? And then there's and again, I don't really know how to address this because it really is subjective, but this game has a lot of sex talk in it, like a lot. There's literally a character in the game, Psychus, I do believe his name is, and every time this dude talks, it's probably going to end up being some sort of sexual innuendo. It's like every time I see this guy, I just want to call HR or something. I am being harassed. And the things that he says, to me, they were never funny, and it was always just awkward. I'm like, all right, man, you're gay, and someone said something about meat, and you're going to say something lewd. Ha ha ha, I guess. I don't know. And I guess that's a perfect segue to the next con, the campfire scene. I know this scene is controversial, but I just want to get my 2 cents in on it. Again, I talk about this in my Metroidvania analysis of Timespinner, but I'll try to do like a quick Reader's Digest version here. And so what I'll do here in the cons, I'll talk about it and why I don't think it worked. And then in the spoilers section, I actually plan on fixing this scene. So stay tuned to that if you're interested. So anyways, the campfire scene, this is your quote unquote reward for doing all the side quests in the game. And so what this reward is you get to sit down with all the characters that are in the base. Now remember, you know these characters because you've done, these side quests for them throughout the game. So anyways, you sit down with all these familiar faces and characters that you know, and they sit you down and talk about their sexualities, which is not something that I'm personally interested in, but I know there are people out there that are interested in it. So I'm not saying having this scene as bad because of that. What I am saying is this scene is superfluous and forced, and let me talk about it. Again, essentially, you just learn about every character's sexuality. But the problem with that is you know every character's sexuality at this point. You've done all the side quests, which I will repeat, this game does a very good job at characterizing all these characters through these side quests. So nothing is new. There are some things that are new here, and I'll talk about that in the spoiler section, but a lot of what's being presented here when it comes to these character sexualities, it's not new. It's repeated, and it's super boring in my opinion. And it just leads to a lot more of that psychus guy just being like a horn dog and super pervy. Now, this scene does go a little deeper into some of the relationships. Well, deeper is not the word I'm looking for, but it just gives you a little bit more details on some of the things. But again, I'm not interested in that. And there are people that are interested in it, and that's cool for you. But for me, who is just a dude who's playing a game, and it's like, I don't really care about any of these people's sex lives or sexualities. It just feels so forced and just kind of boring. And like I said in my analysis, if I were at a campsite and a bunch of people just started talking about their sex lives, I would literally just stand up and leave because I don't want to be a part of that. It's just not something I want to do. I'm not a prude by any stretch of the imagination. It's just, I would rather literally talk about anything else. And I guess it's because I'm an older guy now. I'm like, almost 40. And just hearing about sex nonstop is just obnoxious at this point. And the thing is most Metroidvania players are around my age. And I can, especially when it comes to my subscribers and my listeners, I get all of the analytics of, what your guys' ages are. Now, obviously, I couldn't point at a user and be like, oh, you fall in this demographic or anything like that. But the point is, based off of people's interest in the Metroidvania genre, you're around my age. And so it feels a little weird to have this genre that specifically targets, guys between 35 and 45, targeting us and being like, hey, let's talk about all kinds of sex. And it's just like, really, we're like, we really don't want to talk about this. The world is about to explode. 2 worlds are about to get destroyed, actually, and so is time and reality. Let's focus on that. And I get we're trying to tell a micro story within a macro story. I understand what's happening here, why this is, why the narrative would want to do this. I just don't think it was done in an effective way. And again, I said I will actually fix this scene in the spoiler section, but I just want to close it off there right now. When it comes to this campfire scene, it is not very good. And I know I had some people reach out to me and provide feedback about why the scene would be good, because it really promotes representation, which again, I'm not saying that this scene is bad because it talks about different, representation or different things to represent, right? Like we got a transsexual character, we got an asexual character, polyamorous relationships are talked about, bisexuality. To me personally, I don't care, whatever. You want to talk about that stuff. But to make it a reward for doing all the side quests is just, like, why? I don't want to talk about any of this. And again, it's not solely that I don't want to talk about it. It's that a lot of it's already been talked about. A lot of the scene is just repeating stuff. It's just not a good scene. I'll just leave it at that until I go to fix it. I will fix this scene for y'all. All right, my next con. It has to do with the biomes and how they're repeated. Now, obviously, going through biomes and repeating biomes, that's perfectly fine in Metroidvania. It's just the biomes in this game are incredibly tiny, and there's just so few of them, and you're expected to travel them twice because of the time travel mechanic. Ultimately, it works because everything is in this game is so tiny, right? We got tiny biomes. The game is only like 6 hours long at best. So in the end, it works. It's just, I just think the biomes were uninteresting, and then having to go through them twice was just not the greatest move. And now for the next con, we're going to bring back the world building. And like I said in the pros, I really do like the world that's being built here, but a lot of that world building is done through reading. There's nothing inherently wrong with reading in a video game. I'm not like some sort of caveman or anything. But the proportionality of it is all wrong. For instance, again, this game is like 6 hours long, and maybe 2 hours of that can be used to reading. Now, I think I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there is a lot of reading. I'll say half an hour, 45 minutes of reading. That is almost 10% of an action platformer dedicated to reading. That just never really sat right with me. And I guess that segues into my next con, and that's that this game left me wanting more, but not in a good way. And that's because it had this intriguing world I wanted more of, yet the game just wanted to do its own thing and just decided to drop a bunch of stuff and just not elaborate on things. I brought up earlier that there's demons in the game. like they never really do anything with those demons. Like they talk about them a lot in the reading, and you fight a couple of them, but I was really interested in that dynamic between what the queen did and what she had to sacrifice to get these demons and what those demons did throughout history. It is touched on very, very lightly, but I want to see it. And I don't have this as a con, but it definitely is a con. There's a lot of telling not showing in this game, which if anyone has taken a writing course or is a writer themselves, understands that that's the number one faux pas when it comes to narrative. And I get it. This is a tiny indie game and they can't show everything because that's a lot of resources and a lot of time they probably didn't have. I totally get that. But that doesn't mean I didn't want to see it. I think probably the best example of the tell don't show is when, and you'll have to forgive me, I can't remember everything specific about the game, but there's a point in the game when the atmosphere on the main planet becomes poisonous. And unless you find all the hidden text and lore in the game and read it, you have no idea what's going on. You just kind of go to the present and you die when you step outside because the air is poison now. If they were to somehow show what happened to make the air poisonous, it would have just been so much better for the overall experience. But instead, it just kind of happens, and you could read about it if you find the stuff. And I just didn't think it was the most effective way to tell that part of the story. There are other instances. I'll just leave it at that there. But yeah, there's just a whole lot of telling not showing in this game. And again, I attribute it to it being an indie game and them just not having the resources to, fully fledge out what they wanted to do with the story. I hope this gets remedied in the sequel that's coming out, which I'm excited for, even though I'm bashing this game. I do like this game, and I would love to see what they do in the sequel. All right, I got a few more cons here. I'll see if I can't get through them. I kind of messed up my rhythm by jumping all over the place with these cons, but anyway, let's see. Next one I have here is the time-stopping mechanic was underutilized and broken. I talk about this in depth in my analysis of the game, but basically you're given this time-stopping mechanic. I think it's just like you press a button and you can stop time anytime you want. I mean, you got like this meter that dictates how often you can use it or how much time you can do it with, but essentially you can stop time. When you stop time, you can move out of the way of stuff, or you can use enemies as platforms and things like that. In concept, it is really cool. In practice, I forgot about it. Timespinner is a really easy game, and it never forces you to use the time stop mechanic. Now, of course, that's not entirely true. There are times in the game, like I think the very first boss or the second boss in the game, it'll charge at you and you got to time stop and then move out of the way. But that's an exception. Most of the game, you can just tank and spank everything. So yeah, the time stop, completely underutilized. I forgot I had it the majority of the game. And it's broken. And this is just me being kind of nitpicky, but I really do think it kind of shows the ignorance of the dev team. And I hate to say that word because people think that's me making fun of them or saying they're stupid. I'm not saying they're stupid. I just think that, ignorance, a lack of knowledge. Like if you were to theoretically stop time, you should be able to walk on water. Obviously, because the water doesn't move, time's frozen. However, in Timespinner, you fall into the water when you stop time. I know that sounds nitpicky, but it really did bother me. I'm like, why can't I walk on water? This is ridiculous. And that leads me to my next point, that time travel in this game was a plot device, not a mechanic. And what I mean by that is they used time really to kind of move the plot along or whatever, as opposed to letting the player have some sort of agency to actually play around with time in fun ways. And when I talk about time, I'm talking about moving from the past to the present and vice versa. There are literally only 2 instances where the player has the agency to manipulate something in the past and then go to the present to see what their manipulation did. And both of these instances are in the first biome in the game. You go to the past, you burn these green vines, you travel to the present, and these vines, which would have grown to be, thick trees, no longer exist, and then you can collect whatever collectible is behind where the big trees would be. That's the kind of stuff you expect in a time travel video game. And Timespinner really dropped the ball here, because I am not kidding, that is it when it comes to players being able to manipulate stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, there are things that the player does within the game that affects the future, but it's all plot driven, and a majority of it does not make sense. All right, this brings me to my last point, and I'm going to do my best not to rant and rave and get angry, because if there's any reason to get upset with this game, it's because of this. And it has to do with those stupid 3 laser barriers that are basically blocking you from entering the last 2 biomes of the game. Taking down these barriers is stupid and illogical and just absolutely, I don't even know how to explain it. It is actually dumb. And I do my best not to crap all over devs, and because they make these games. It's a passion, and they put a lot of hard work into it. But these 3 barriers, wow, what were they thinking? I'll try to be brief. There are these 3 barriers. They're blocking you to get into these last 2 biomes. Your little dragon companion tells you to go back in time and change things. And somehow this will lower the barriers. And so you have to go back in time and do these 3 things. Kill the demons, humble the queen after defeating her in a fight, and destroy the portal between the 2 planets. Each time you do one of these things, one of the laser barriers goes down. How does that make sense? I go in the past, killed 2 demons, and a laser goes down. Like, seriously, make that make sense for me. Then I go and humble the queen after defeating her, go back to the present, a second laser goes down. What does that even mean? And then get this, you go back into the past, you do the 3rd task, which is to destroy the portal, and the 3rd laser goes down in the present, right? Wrong. A ship crashes into it. Like, what? I don't know. I probably should have saved this part for the spoilers, but because it's so illogical and makes absolutely no sense, and I feel like everyone should know how stupid this part is, I'm leaving it out here. If you want to go down in the comments and you want to, try to make this make sense for me, I would greatly appreciate it. I think this is an oversight from the game developers. They contrived some ridiculous reason why you can't get into the final biomes, and it ultimately made this game feel video gamey and incredibly stupid. And I guess that's it for the cons, except there's one more thing about this game that kind of bugs me, and that's that this game doesn't feel like a complete game. Again, I do like this game, but it feels like an appetizer or a demo for a bigger game. I don't know. You guys can let me know what you think about that statement, but yeah, there's just something about Timespinner that just doesn't make it feel complete, and it's something that I really hope they bring full circle with the sequel. All right, it's time for spoilers on Timespinner. Go here to skip it and to go to my final thoughts and my ranking of Timespinners. And that's that. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. It's funny. I'm looking at my spoilers bullet points here, and I see one of them says missteps in logic, the 3 barriers. I actually was going to do that in the spoilers, but I don't know. I need everyone to know how ridiculous that is. And I don't think it's going to spoil anything. But what? We got to go back in time and change stuff in the time travel game? No, I think you guys could figure that out. So that leaves me with a couple of bullet points here for the spoiler section. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fulfill my promise. I'm going to fix that crappy camp scene. All right, you ready for it? So in order to fix the scene, you got to understand where it failed. And where it fails is that it basically holds you hostage in the scene and makes you hear about all this sex talk and all this different sexuality stuff. And all this stuff is not new. So it's redundant and it's boring and you just really don't want to hear it. So in order to fix it, we got to understand what is new in this scene, because there are some new things in the scene. And you'll have to forgive me because I can't remember all their names, but I'll do my best. But one thing that's new in this scene is that Linnaeus and Nell, they, I guess, become a couple in this scene. They make it official. So that's new, and I think that's important. So if we're going to fix it, we got to make sure that we hit that point. Another new thing we learn here is that, and I don't know if they explicitly say it, but they at least imply it, that the big Amazonian warrior lady, she's asexual, and her partner is polyamorous. And through that, we learned that Linnaeus is bisexual, and her tribe does polyamory as well when they do the time travel and stuff like that. Like a wife will bring in another guy into the relationship if that guy was, time traveled or whatever. So learning that Linnaeus is bisexual, I guess, is new, but that her tribe is polyamorous or practices polyamory, that's not. You actually read up on that. So that's not important to anything in the scene. And quite honestly, I do believe the asexuality aspect and the polyamory with the other characters, those are touched upon in some other readings and through some side quests as well. So that's actually not very important for this scene either, in terms of being new information. The only other new bit of information in this scene is that Psychus, I do believe it was Psychus, the one who's like super pervy and is like always speaking innuendos. He was in a relationship with another guy within the group, but he's currently dating another new guy in the group. And so the new guy didn't know that Psychus was also dating this other guy that's in the group. So that's new information. It's technically not important, but it's new info and we can throw it in our new scene. Why not? And so yeah, this long 10-minute scene, I think it's like 10 minutes. It feels like an hour. But yeah, this long scene can really be boiled down to Lunaeus and Nell hook up, and these three other guys learn that there was past relationships with Psychus or whatever his name was. And so how great would this scene have been as a cutscene? And you can do it with almost zero dialogue. Like the dialogue would be reserved for when Nell and Lunaeus are speaking at the cliff or whatever, and Nell gives her the galaxy egg, which is this accessory. And so the cutscene is just the group at the campfire, and they're talking and they're partying or doing dancing, whatever. And through actions, it can be implied that Selkis had a relationship with this other dude, and this other guy's just learning about it, and then they have a laugh about it or something. I don't know, anything to really get that across. And again, I'm trying to do showing, not telling here. So essentially, I'm just saying, hey, take this sitting down and talking at me and turn it into a scene where they're celebrating or having fun. And through subtle acts, we can infer or figure out all these different things that you want to get across. And then the scene can end with Nell nervously asking Lunaeus to meet her somewhere. Then we can have the scene with Lunaeus and Nell actually talking about their relationship and how they're going to move forward with it and whatnot. That would have made this scene so much better. Just seeing these characters having fun, learning stuff through their actions, and then capping it off with the important bit of Lunaeus actually finding love or a relationship with somebody else. And it could have took like 2-3 minutes. I don't know. You let me know what you think, but I think that would be a fix. I didn't go in complete detail on it, but I think, you get the gist of it. And really, I'm just like, man, just show me instead of just telling me, man. And the last part for the spoilers I have here is the path to the true ending. I talked about how you had to find these 3 MacGuffins, and then you could find the true path. That's all cool and all, but I really liked how the Sandman comes in, and how what the Sandman does, if I remember correctly, is anytime anyone uses the time spinner or travels through time, it creates these different timelines. And so the Sandman has to go and fix these timelines. And by fix, I'm pretty sure he eats everything in the timeline. So all of that, really cool concepts. My only real issue with it is that the foreshadowing for this was so heavy-handed, which typically is okay, but I just hated how it was handled. The dragon would say he's getting stronger. He would use the pronoun game. That always just bugs the crap out of me. I just think that's poor writing, to using the pronoun game when you're trying to hype something up. No, but overall, just the Sandman character and how it devours the timelines, and it's basically just sick and tired of all the crap that Lunaeus is doing, and so it's finally time to take Lunaeus out. But Lunaeus has gotten stronger somehow. I couldn't tell you how, but apparently she's gotten stronger since the beginning of the game, and she's able to take out the Sandman. And I think become the Eternal Mother, is that what it's called? Anyway, it's cool, and I like it a lot, and again, just really, really excited for what the next game is going to bring. All right, now my final thoughts on Timespinner. Timespinner is far from perfect, but what it does very well. Its presentation's high quality, and its condensed world, well-implemented fast travel, and constant back and forth between time periods and sections of the map make the game move at a breakneck pace that makes it hard to put down, especially because progression feels so rewarding. Its relatively short length could have been a strength, but the game was too ambitious and left so many interesting story aspects and mechanics underbaked, ultimately making the game feel like a glorified demo than a finished product. And with that, where would I put Timespinner on the tier list? Let's see. It's higher than F, it's higher than D. Is it higher than C? I don't think so. No, I think it's a C. It's definitely a C. Presentation-wise, it's an S. I'll give you that. But overall package, I don't see it going above a C, again, because it just feels like it's unfinished. And there's just so much showing, not telling. I'll give it better than Mystic Bell. I really got to take a look at Fist. I don't think I did that game justice. We'll talk about that another day. God, I gotta take a look at convergence too. I think that needs to go lower. Anyway. You know what? I'll put it as the highest C for now. I don't know if that's a cop-out or what, but I feel it is probably the best average Metroidvania you can play. Again, it's not perfect, and it's leaps in logic, and it's just broken mechanics are just silly. But for what it does very, very well. At least well enough for me to really be excited for the sequel. So yeah, there we go. Timespinner. I have it as the best average Metroidvania you could probably play. All right, and our next game is Minoria. I am not going to lie to you. I barely remembered anything about this game. Like, I remembered it existed, but like nothing else. I couldn't remember hardly anything. I had to replay it. I remember playing it a few years ago, and I beat it in like one sitting, and so that really like, typically if I do that, I am more likely to forget a game. Not entirely, but a great majority of it. Like, I remember playing it and kind of liking it, but any of the other details, absolutely everything just left my mind. So in preparation for this episode, I popped it back in and played it a little bit, and yeah, I can see some reasons why it was pretty forgettable. But we'll get into all that. Let's go ahead and let's get started with the pros on this game. So the first pro I have from Minoria is Sister Samilla. I thought it was kind of cool. In this game, you play as a nun. She has that little, like, I don't even know what it is, like an astral crown or some sort of like crown on top of her head. It's kind of cool looking. Maybe it's transparent. I don't know, but it looks really cool. And of course, she's got her nun outfit. She's got the slits in the legs. Like, oh yeah, nice. But all joking aside, yeah, she's got a pretty cool character design. I liked her a whole lot. And that really just kind of takes us into our next bullet point here, and that is just the game's presentation. I don't really know how to describe the presentation in this game other than I really like it. It's I don't know, that I wouldn't say it's like Vanillaware-esque, but it's like a step down from what Vanillaware does. And I know I use the word step down. I don't mean it as a negative. I'm just saying it's like what Vanillaware does, but it's not as high quality as that. But man, this still looks really, really good. I think it's kind of like a 2.5D-ish models that they're using for the character designs, if I recall correctly. But it really has to do with like the coloring and of these characters. I don't know. I really like it. I think it looks really good. I don't really have the mind for art, if you can imagine. So I just know what I like, and I really like this. All right, my next bullet point here. This has a very solid atmosphere. Like, you're going through the biomes, and you get this kind of cohesion with everything that's going on until the last biome, and we'll get to that. I love that last biome. But yeah, the biomes in this game, they all come together nicely, make a solid atmosphere, and a lot of it comes together because I really like the lighting in this game. How shadows are used, or how darkness is used in specific areas. It's just, yeah, it's done really, really well, and you know, it kind of adds to the presentation. But it's just, yeah, it's just great stuff, man. And while I'm still talking about things that are on the presentation side, I really like Sister Samilla's idle animation. Like, if you stand still for a second, you know how like Sonic, he'll like tap his foot or whatever? Sister Samilla will start dancing, and these like butterflies will appear and start flying around her. I don't know what that's all about or what the lore is on that, but it looks really good and I like it. All right, I know I'm really harping on the presentation for this game, but it's really, really strong. And so my next bullet point is the satisfying hits that you do in the game. And what I mean by that is like you'll hit someone with your sword, it'll make a very satisfying slashing noise, the screen will shake, and some other like flourishes will happen on the screen. Again, just that presentation, it all adds up, and it feels great every time you hit or slash something in this game. And since we talked about hitting things, I guess we can talk a little bit about the combat, finally moving away from the presentation. Combat overall is pretty ho-hum. There's not a whole lot to really talk about on it, but I do like this game's parry. It's not my favorite because you have to be perfectly still before you can parry. Like, if you press the parry button while you're moving at all, you'll do a dodge. But if you are able to pull the parry off, it's really, really cool. So what happens is you stop the attack, and then Sister Samilla just kind of like disappears and then reappears and just starts slashing everybody, kind of like you're watching an anime and she's a ninja or something. It's highly satisfying to watch and pull off. And what makes it even cooler is that it doesn't just attack the person that you parried. Sister Samilla will attack everyone on screen. Now, that's not to say every time you parry, you're going to hit everyone on screen. But if you parry somebody and start doing those slashes and you kill that individual, she'll just move on to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, until like everyone is dead, if you're strong enough to do that. It hits pretty hard, and it looks really cool. So yeah, I absolutely loved the parry in this game. The next bullet point I have here is that the healing is near instant. And so you may not know this, but Minoria attempts to be a Soulsvania. And I say attempts because I think it falls flat on its face. But we're not into the cons right now. I'm going to stick with the pros. And one of the pros, like I said, healing is near instant. And what that should kind of remind you of is like the Estus flasks. Except in this game, they're called incenses. That's tough to say, but it's an incense, right? And they refill at the quote-unquote bonfires. But in this game, they're like ink wells. That's where you save your game. And I can't remember how many you start with, like 3 or 5 or something like that. And you end up with like 8 or 9, whatever. But anyway, if you use an incense, you heal 40% of your HP. And like I said, it's like near instant. As soon as you press the button, boom, you're going to heal yourself. And that's a pretty big deal considering how hard the enemies hit in this game. But again, we'll talk about that when we get to the cons. Next bullet point I have here is that the world is interesting. And I mean that. I really like the setting and the lore and everything that's being set up in Minoria. But much like Timespinner, I don't think they spend a whole lot of time or enough time to really flesh out a lot of stuff. But what Minoria does get out there, I am kind of interested in. So I really hope they do make a sequel to this game. And that largely comes down to the world that they've created. I'm just interested to see what happens next. All right, next bullet point here is multiple weapons. I always like a game that gives you multiple weapons to use. There's not a whole lot of variety here. I think pretty much every weapon is kind of like a sword or like is used exactly like a sword. Some of the animations are very, very similar. There are like some combo variations between the weapons, but largely they're pretty much the same weapon. But I don't know what it is. I just like getting new weapons in a game. I don't know what to tell you. Ooh, one of the weapons you get is actually the maple leaf from Momodora. So that's cool. All right, moving on from weapons, we also have incense. And like I already talked about, incense in this game can be used for healing. Those are called healing incenses, as you could, probably guess. But there are all kinds of other incenses as well. And so incenses come in 2 different varieties. There's active incense and then passive incense. Active incenses are going to be the incenses you use by pressing a button. For instance, the healing incense that we talked about that heals 40% of your HP. Well, there are all kinds of other incenses that do a bunch of crazy stuff too. Typically, your active incenses are going to do like magic spells or something. I remember one in particular summons like a wolf head to chomp down, and then there's another one that summons lightning. Then there's another one that shoots like a laser beam or something. There's a ton of these active incenses that you can find, and they're always kind of fun to use. So big plus in the game's favor. And each incense comes with like a certain charge. Like I said, I can't remember. Maybe I can shoot lightning at you like 9 times or something. And then those charges will recharge, for lack of a better term, at the ink wells, aka bonfires in this game. Then there are the passive incenses. These are very much like, God, I hate to use this example over and over and over again, but yeah, they are the charms from Hollow Knight, or the badges in Tevi, which we'll be talking about. And guess what? I'm going to use that stupid example again. But yeah, incenses, I mean, maybe we can just say that they're accessories, right? You put them on, they give you passive buffs. And these buffs, they can be damage reduction, make a noise when you're near a secret, I don't know. I can't think of another one off the top of my head. Probably give you more money when you kill a thing or something like that. Although there isn't money in this game, there's silver coins, and I think I'll talk about that in a little bit. Oh, actually, that's my next bullet point. But before we talk about the silver coins, finishing up with the passive incenses. The biggest issue with the passive incenses is that there's only 2 slots for them, and that's it. You never get any more. At least I never found any more. But you know how in Hollow Knight you can get more notches, or in Tevi you can get more EP, right? And again, that'll make sense when we talk about it. But you never get anything to where you can increase the amount of passive incenses that you can equip. And I think that was kind of a letdown, but it works out. It's fine, I guess. Okay, now onto the silver coins, which is my next bullet point. In fact, it says silver coins / side quests. You know me, I love me a healthy economy in my Metroidvanias, and this game, I don't know if I would say it was like, well, yeah, of course it's healthy, but it's not as robust as I would want it to be. You essentially have to find these silver coins, and then you use these coins at like a shopkeeper, and you can get more incenses, and I think maybe even some weapons or something. Like I said, I can't remember everything off the top of my head on this game. But yeah, you find these silver coins out and about where you're exploring, and you can get some, I do believe, as you do some side quests in the game. And I don't remember there being a lot of side quests in the game. The only 2 I can remember, there's like a slug person, some person that was turned into a slug, and then maybe like a goblin you give something to, and he eventually gives you silver coins or something like that. But yeah, I mean, you gotta love side quests, and you gotta love exploring and finding that currency, right? And that's what you can do in Minoria. I was looking at my file, and I think I found like 30 coins. I don't know how many silver coins are in the game, but at least 30, maybe more. And I want to say I bought everything in the game, so maybe 30 is the amount of coins that are in the game. You guys can tell me in the comments. But yeah, I always like, if you're not going to give me like gold or something as I defeat enemies, give me something else to find that I could use as currency. I don't know, it just it scratches this part of my brain that I absolutely love, where it's like, ooh, I found the currency. Ooh, I found this. Just being rewarded through exploration is an excellent feeling, and it just makes the things that you purchase with these silver coins or these more rare currencies just makes them that much better. All right, next bullet point I have here is something I didn't know about when I played the game, and not something I'm really interested in, but it's that you can get like special items if you defeat bosses without taking damage. And this is a holdover from this game's developer's last game, Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight. But yeah, apparently you can defeat these bosses without taking a hit and you get a special item. I never did it. I can't even really talk to it, but if that's something that you're interested in, because this is a challenging game and this just makes that challenge more challenging. So if that's what you want to do, it's there for you. Okay, so the next pro I have here is very subjective, something that if you've been following me, you know exactly probably what it is. It's something I absolutely love in Metroidvanias, and that's any way to not feel so isolated. And so what this game offers is a dedicated button to talk to your sidekick, Sister Fran. So you press the button, and then in the bottom right corner, Sister Fran will pop up like her portrait will, and then she'll say something, give you some flavor text about, what biome you're in or what your objective is or something like that. I absolutely love things like that, man. Again, it makes it to where I don't feel so isolated in the game, and it's an absolutely wonderful diegetic way to have players get hints if they so choose. I don't know, y'all might think it's kind of stupid, but I thought it was awesome. All right, my penultimate pro here is the final biome. I think I talked about it a little earlier in this rant, if you will, but yes, the final biome in this game is really, really awesome. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to have a spoiler section for this game because I don't really think it's necessary. There's not a whole lot to talk about. But I just want you to know that I loved the final biome in this game. I thought it looked cool. I thought the concept of it was cool. And it just really contrasts with the rest of the game. And it's just fantastic. So if you do play this game, look forward to it. And my final pro here is that there is a post game for Minoria. It's a new game plus. And there's also a new dungeon. The dungeon isn't hidden very well. It's like a red teleporter you find in the library, which is like this game's kind of hub. And you can return to that library by like touching some white light or blue light that's in the biomes. And so yeah, within the library, there's a red light that you can touch, and then you can go into the new dungeon. I personally didn't go through this dungeon, and we'll talk about that in the cons, but if you want to, you can go through the dungeon. There's a secret boss, so yay if you want to do that. And that'll do it for the pros for Minoria. Let's move on to the cons. All right, the first con I have here is that Minoria is just barely a Metroidvania. It just barely ekes its way into the Metroidvania space, man. This game is completely linear and almost has zero utility gating. The only abilities that Sister Similia gets is she gets an air dash and a double jump, and that's really it. Most of the other gating in this game are like literal gates you need keys for. And yes, this game is super linear. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but whenever backtracking is essentially just completely off the table in your Metroidvania, you should probably rethink things, at least at a world design level. My next con is the dodge roll. I appreciate a good dodge roll, but I don't know, there's something about the dodge roll in Minoria that just didn't do it for me. I don't know if it was because it just didn't go far enough or that there's contact damage, which I absolutely hate in games, but I mean, it's a 2D platformer staple, so I'm not going to, I try not to trash it too much, but I think if you're trying to be a Soulsvania and you still have contact damage, that just seems silly to me. My next con is that there are special moves in this game, but they're limited, kind of like the active instances where you only have like so many charges of it. Same thing with the special moves, like you get like a lunge for certain swords, like even there's a soup ladle in the game and that gets a special move, like a heavy lunge, but you can only use it like 3 times. And then once you use it the 3 times, you don't get it back until you rest at your inkwell or whatever. Same thing with the special move called Cross Slash, which is a really, really cool move. It's basically Sister Similia disappearing and doing the slashy thing like on the entire screen. It's not a parry, you just can charge it up and do it. It's really cool. But yeah, you only get to use it once and then you can't use it again until you like go to an inkwell or something. I can understand the overpowered Cross Slash needing to be recharged at inkwells, but like other moves like the heavy lunge, that just didn't make a lot of sense to me. And I guess that brings me to combat in general. Like the combat in this game, it really didn't do much. It was very much bare bones and didn't it felt great because you'd hit something, the screen would change. Like, we talked about the sound design and presentation, absolutely fantastic stuff. But a lot of the stuff in this game, it's like you hit them, and if you don't kill them within like 3 or 4 slashes, they're going to hit you back. Like everything has like hyper armor. And I guess that brings me to my next point, is that enemies do way too much damage in this game. Just an absolutely absurd amount of damage. And this brings me back to how this game, it wants to be a Soulsvania so bad, but it doesn't nail it. And one of the ways that it tries to be a Soulsvania is it tries to be difficult for no reason. And that difficulty comes from just, like, seriously, a regular enemy can take like half to 3/4 of your HP away with a single hit, or at least a third. So at that point, it's like, why even have HP? Just give me like 2 or 3 like little like ticks. You know what I mean? It's just crazy. And like I said earlier, the healing instance in this game is near instant. And it needs to be, because man, everything in this game hits so freaking hard. I don't know. I don't know why they did that, but that's what they did. So you'll be dying a lot in this game just because Sister Samilla cannot take a hit. And so yeah, that just takes away so much from the combat. You're going to die very easily. There's contact damage, and the dodge just doesn't go far enough to really be helpful. Not that it's completely terrible, but it could have been better. And again, if you don't kill something in 3 or 4 hits, you're going to have to do a dodge, or they're going to blast you. It just made for really weird exchanges. And there's not like you can like do juggling or anything like that. It's just there's just not a lot to the combat. It's you're hitting, then you're probably going to dodge, maybe you'll do a parry. But yeah, combat was just nothing special. And that really goes to what I was saying about like the dungeon in the post game. I had absolutely no desire to do this dungeon because I did not like the combat in this game. I didn't even do a new game plus. I mean, what's the point? Like, really, what's the point of the new game plus? This will take me right to my next bullet here, and that's that leveling up in this game is completely pointless. I did not understand why there was a leveling system. Like, you don't get any skill points when you level up. There's no build you can use. Every level up is like a flat rate, and I don't even know what it increases. Maybe your damage, because Sister Samilla can hit pretty hard, but I could have swore when I was watching some reviews on this game a long time ago, someone actually calculated it and said that like your HP goes up by like fractions of a percent every time you level up. Now, I'm not going to confirm or deny that. I do not know. So if you guys can figure that out and throw that in the comments, go for it. But what I can tell you is that leveling up never seems significant in this game. There are no character builds because you can't put anything into stats. And there's no weapon damage scaling based off those stats. So why you'd want to do a new game plus, I have no idea. And I don't really know how to segue into this point, but one of the other bigger cons I had for this game was that enemies return when you return to a screen. That's a big thing in Soulsvanias, is that when you fight an enemy and you defeat them, typically those fights are pretty significant because those enemies, they can take you down pretty quickly, just like the ones here in Minoria. But the difference in a traditional Soulsvania is that those enemies will not return unless you hit up that bonfire or save point or whatever. In Minoria, those enemies come back every time you re-enter a screen. It's super obnoxious and can lead to some really cheap deaths. Or at the very least, it'll drain you of your healing instances. I don't know, I just thought having enemies respawn upon entering a screen was such a poor decision. My next con are the biomes in general. I know I said a whole lot of positive stuff about the final biome, but all the other biomes in this game, they are just, they don't really do it for me. It's very much like castle-y. And one of the things that Minoria tries to do with its biomes is that they use different color schemes for the different biomes, but that just wasn't enough for me. It all just felt very samey. My next con is that the UI in this game is trash. I may be being a little harsh when I say that, but I didn't appreciate the UI in this game. Like, if I wanted to switch weapons, I'd have to, I think, like, pause the game, go to items, and then in items, all of the weapons are like at the top part, but the weapons shared the same screen or subsection with every other item in the game. Like, you could cycle through weapons, and then all of a sudden you'd be in key items. I don't know, I just found that to be a little weird. And then my last con, I'm not doing a spoiler section for Minoria, but I will say there are 2 different endings in this game. Both of them are kind of bummers, but they're not bad endings. My issue with them is that you can get both of them just at the very end with a binary choice. So if you want both endings, you just, play the game, make one choice, beat the game, see the ending, load up the game, and then make the other choice and see the other ending. I always find this to be super lazy. Like, for anyone who's played Shin Megami Tensei games, there's like the neutral, the good, and the chaos paths. And to attain those paths, you got to do all kinds of different things, right? And yeah, I know SMT isn't a Metroidvania, but how cool would that be, right? Anyway, in SMT 5, they completely got rid of that and made like, a choice-based. Like there's a section in SMT 5 where it's just like, all right, choose your path. Now, I think there's a specific path that you have to do some things in order to get, but like 3 or 4 of the paths you can just choose, and it just felt super lazy. That's what happens here in Minoria. The final boss just like talks to you, you get a choice, you make that choice, and you get the ending that you choose. Again, super lame, super lazy. And before I get to my final thoughts, I thought I should probably mention the bosses. I barely mentioned them earlier, but a lot of people will tell you that the bosses in this game, they like the bosses. Me, I can't tell you one way or the other. I barely remember them. So I can't tell you if they're a pro or a con. It's just, I found them to be very forgetful experiences, and that really brings me to my final thoughts. Minoria is a decent enough game with a strong art direction and an interesting setting, but it's largely forgettable thanks to its lackluster exploration, dull platforming, and mediocre combat. It tries to be a Soulsvania, but fails spectacularly by leaving out all of the fun aspects Souls-likes offer while still giving us all the shit parts. And with all that said, where do I think Minoria goes on the tier list? And I could tell you, it's not an F. It is, it's not a D. It's definitely a C. I'll put it there, just resting. But yeah, I don't know. Let's see. I'm just calculating in my head. No. It's going to be pretty dang low C. I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, I mean, I'll put circle above it. Yeah, I'll put Gato above it. Yeah, 100%. I'll put dissonance above it. Okay, I'm good there. Right there. Yeah, that's pretty good. There you go, Minoria. It's a pretty low C. It's below mid, but not like incredibly low. And I think that's fair because it wants to be a Soulsvania. I feel like it wants to be a Soulsvania, but it doesn't hit it. It doesn't nail it. It just makes everything overly difficult with its ridiculous enemy damage. And then there's not a whole lot you can do within the game. Like, I don't understand its New Game Plus. What am I going to do with its New Game Plus? The leveling system makes no sense in this game. Again, I'll just lean on you guys. Maybe I'm ignorant. Maybe you guys can educate me and be like, oh, actually, leveling does this. I just don't see it. And then its exploration it just isn't all that fun. And its combat is just meh at best. I don't know. I putting it in C, I think is the right choice. And then putting it relatively low, I think does it well. And it just sucks to see it because I loved Momodora so much. You can see Momodora, Reverie Under the Moonlight, I have as a mid B. And then Bomb Service, they go and make this game afterwards, and it's a clear step down. But that's okay. We all have our hiccups. So yeah, Minoria, mid to low C. I'm pretty comfortable with that. All right, and the last game for this episode is Tevi. Tevi's another game that I've actually done a Metroidvania analysis on. Again, put the card up top if you want to check that out. All right, let's do the pros for Tevi. First pro I have here is that Tevi is bright. And what I mean by that, I mean a lot of things. Its presentation is very, very colorful, very, very bright. Its music is upbeat and just has this very, very vibrant vibe, for lack of a better term. The character portraits are intricate and look just really great. And there's this kind of like goofiness to it that just makes everything just seem so energetic and fun. So yeah, that's what I mean when I say that Tevi's bright. And man, I'm looking at these bullet points for pros, and they are completely out of order, but I'm just gonna shotgun it. Let's go. Next thing I like about Tevi is the crafting system. As you play through Tevi, you get different abilities, you get different pieces of equipment, things like that. And every time you get a new thing, you can upgrade it in the crafting system or crafting menu. And to craft, just like any other game, you got to make sure you find the correct materials. And I think this is where Tevi did a good job with its crafting, is that it really didn't want to confuse anybody. There's only like maybe a dozen materials, maybe less. And they have like generic names. Again, I can't remember off the top of my head, but one material might be like food item or something. And to create a food item to heal, you just have to collect X amount of food item or whatever. Again, can't remember the names, but they're pretty generic. And these generic names were created to keep it simple, which I think they did a good job in doing. And so yeah, there's not a whole bunch of different materials to collect, which again, I think is a good thing. And you collect them, they keep track of it all, and specific items require specific things. So you become pretty intimately familiar with what items or what skills or whatever needs what particular material. It's simple, it's easy, and didn't really require a lot of farming either. At least I didn't have to farm. The most the game would have you farm is that it gates specific materials and forces you to get later into the game before those materials become more common. And the material that I can remember off the top of my head is, I think it's like the ice material or something like that. If you want to craft certain items into specific levels, you have to have this ice material, and they're pretty rare in the beginning. But then as you get into like the ice biome or the snowy biome, they're much more common. So I suppose you could farm for these materials, but I never really had to because one, I was never like too weak to where I felt like I needed to grind, and two, I just knew that eventually these items or these materials would become so common it wouldn't even matter. And so anytime there's a crafting system that doesn't lean heavily into grindiness, I think that's a great thing. My one critique about the crafting system is that I didn't really like how it updated. There are different chapters in Tevi, and at the beginning of each chapter, the crafting list would update. And so I guess it kept things kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It creates this kind of gameplay loop, I suppose, to where you start a new chapter, and one of the first things you do is you go into your crafting menu to see what new things you can craft. So I guess that worked well and was pretty effective, but I would have liked to have seen it handled a little differently. I don't know, just like maybe you find recipes or something out and about while you're looking for stuff. I don't know, that may complicate things. So maybe what Tevi does is probably the best, but I don't know. Every chapter, it was just like, hey, now you got new stuff to craft. And it's like, man, I didn't feel like I earned it, but I guess I kind of did earn it because I got to this chapter. So I don't know, maybe I'm just, blowing smoke at this point. I guess overall, there's really not a whole lot to complain about with the crafting system. It's simple and it worked well enough. The next pro I have here is biome diversity. That seems like such a generic thing to praise Metroidvania on, but sometimes you get some biomes and they just feel so samey, and you're like, man. So when a Metroidvania does do pretty well with this biome diversity, you tend to appreciate it more. And as stated earlier, every biome looks really bright and is really eye-catching. There are some where it's like, you're in a sewer or something like that. Of course, those aren't, very great, but it happens. You're going to go underground. You're going to go into a sewer system or something like that. And it would be weird to have a bright sewer, I suppose. But there are some really cool biomes going on here. We have like that one like palace or whatever it was, or dungeon or something that was just all white. That was really cool. There's a biome with lots of cherry blossoms. I like that one a lot. And so on and so forth. I don't want to go into every little biome in this game for spoilers' sake, but just know there's a lot of diversity here, and some of it's a little predictable. You got your ice area, you got your fire area, things like that. It's not that big of a deal, and they do a pretty good job. Next up, I have boss fights. This pro should get bonus points because if you're going into Tevi, it's because of these boss fights. I'll go into it more in the cons when it comes to everything else in this game, but when it comes to the boss fights, this is the main course of Tevi. When you hear somebody talk about Tevi and how it's kind of like a Metroidvania meets a bullet hell, this is what they're talking about of these boss fights. And yes, Metroidvania meets bullet hell is a very apt description. As you fight these bosses, they'll just, litter the screen with all kinds of bullets that you have to dodge. And each boss has a lot of different patterns you have to, figure out and memorize in order to effectively, fight back. So there's a lot of dodging, there's a lot of shooting and hitting and fighting back and trying to figure out how to weave in between stuff to get the opportune moment to attack. This is really Tevi at its best. And I can't think of a single boss fight in this game that isn't at least good. Though a lot of them I would say are pretty great, especially if you dig this kind of boss fight. If you don't like bullet hells, then I could absolutely see why you wouldn't like any of these fights. But I'm a pretty big fan of these fights and bullet hells, and so here you are, listening to me talk about how great these boss fights are. And I don't imagine anybody who digs Tevi would be like, oh, these boss fights suck. Of course these boss fights don't suck. If you like Tevi or even Rabby Ribby, you're going to love these boss fights. All right, the next bullet I have here is character portraits and stills. I kind of already talked about that a little bit when I talked about the game's brightness. But yeah, the character portraits and the still images that'll come up on the screen every once in a while, they're a sight to behold. They're wonderfully detailed, and I always looked forward to seeing them. My next pro is the badge system. I don't want to spend too much time on the badge system, but it is really, really good. And the reason I don't want to spend too much time on it is because we could really go down a rabbit hole and talk about all the different kinds of builds and all the different things that these badges can do. But I think it might just be apt to say that it's a very, very good system that's incredibly robust and adds a lot to the game's, character building and replayability. So you might be asking yourself, what is the badge system? I absolutely hate that I always use a comparison, but it's just like it's charms in Hollow Knight. You get so many quote-unquote notches, and in this game it's called EP, and each badge requires a certain number of EP in order to equip. Those EP values can range from 0 to 9, so I'm pretty sure that EP means like equip points. And equip points increase as you level up, or you find specific items in the game, like I think it's the yellow potion, the lemon bunny potion, I think is what it's called. So it was always high priority to get these EP points up. And that's because the more, again, as you obviously would understand, the more EP you have, the equip points, the more badges you can equip. And these badges, man, they do some crazy stuff. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't dive too much into the badge system. I'm a pretty simple dude. I went with just like melee build. Like I'd look at a badge and if it said increase melee damage by 1.5% or whatever it said, that would be the badge that I would equip. Is it boring? Yes. But is it easy? Yes. That's not to say I didn't appreciate all the other random crap that these other badges could do. And like I said, you can create some really interesting or off-the-wall builds because of all these badges. I think by the end of the game, and I was nowhere near 100% in this game, I might have gotten like 80% of the items, maybe 70-something%. But by end game, I had to have had like 30 of these things equipped, and I probably could have equipped like 10 more. And so yeah, just imagine having 40 different badges equipped that are doing all kinds of different weird things. Increasing damage, reducing damage, adding extra moves to your repertoire because you reached like an S rank in your combo counter or something like that. Like some of these badges, they get really weird. Like there's like the Lucky 7 one, like, and I can't even describe it, but it's like if you have a 7 somewhere on the screen, you do 7% more damage or something stupid like that. I could be misrepresenting it, but you get the point. Like these badges, they can get out there. It's just a really good system that, like I said, I did the bare minimum with it. I just like, hey, you give me 1.5% more damage in my melee, I'm going to use that in my build, and that's the build I made. But I'm sure there are some people out there that have made some broken builds, and to that I say, you are awesome. I really just don't have the mind for stuff like that. I mean, I guess I do. I don't find it valuable. I just want to hit hard because I'm a caveman. But the fact that the game gives you so much customization, you gotta love it. And so that's why this badge, like, if boss fights are like why you come to Tevi, the badge system is why you stay. Like the boss fights and the badge system, they go hand in hand and just make Tevi a fantastic game. All right, the next bullet point I have here is combat. Finally get to talk about combat, I suppose. I like the combat in Tevi, well enough. I don't think Tevi gives you enough opportunities to really, enjoy the combat, but the actual system is pretty solid. And what I mean about opportunities, I'll get into in the cons section. But as far as the actual combat and the mechanics to it go, it's pretty good. You have your basic slash combos. You can press a direction, do a different attack. You can fire off your little orbiters. You build up your combo, which gives you more damage and, could potentially unlock different moves depending on the badges that you have equipped. Then there's even like this dodge that builds up, and there's this cool dodge move you can do to help you with evasion and stuff like that. There's a lot to the game, but I never felt it was overwhelming. And maybe that's because I didn't engage like 100% with the badge system, but I'm sure this combat can get way more complex if you choose to do it that way. But yeah, I'll talk more about the cons of combat when I get to the cons. I do want to move on to the next the next pro I have here, and that is exploration. I don't think the exploration in Tevi is the best, but it is a lot. Like, I don't think I can remember how many biomes are in this game, but like maybe 20, maybe less than 20. I don't know. But believe me when I say there's a lot. And exploration, even though I don't think it's the best, it's still really fun. There's just so much to collect in this game. Like the bunny potions were a lot of fun. There were side quests that you could find, like this one character that you would find her and then you'd have to race to a spot or something like that. That was always kind of fun to come across. And then every time I found a new badge was always a thrill. I always want to know immediately what that badge would do. There's more I want to say about exploration, but unfortunately I'm going to keep it for the cons. So that means we're going to move on to the next one, and that is the next pro, and that is post-game stuff, is what I put here. So yeah, there's a lot to Tevi's post-game. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but there might be like, I don't know, 10 different modes you can unlock, and each mode does something a little different. I think one's called free roam, where it's like, it just completely nixes the story, and I think it gives you like all the abilities. You can just literally just go anywhere in the game. And then there's another one that's like, it randomizes the badges. So if you were to play Tevi, this one badge will always be in this one area, right? Well, with badge randomization, you can find another badge in that badge's place. And this potentially could lead to like some really bonker builds and randomization as you play through, your next playthrough. So yeah, if you dig Tevi, there's a whole bunch for you to do once you complete it. It's kind of mind-boggling. My next pro is that I liked Tevi as a character. I just thought she was a lot of fun. She's confident, she knows how to play people. She's kind of goofy with her whole waffle-loving aspect, although that aspect, the waffle-loving part felt a little too forced in my opinion, because they just wanted to give her a quirk, but whatever, it is what it is. And I love that she's like super smart. She's like an engineer, and she's working on these robots and reverse engineering and stuff like that. It was just cool, and I just really liked her. She doesn't really grow that much in the game, I don't think. I remember the game's characters. There's what are their names? There's Tevi, there's Sable, and then there's Celia. And they were very kind of one note in how they acted. Like they were almost like stereotypes. And they had their moments of growth, but nothing really stuck. I don't know. I'd probably have to play through the game again, but none of the characters really like resonated with me, but I just remember actually kind of liking Tevi. I thought she was pretty cool. Next pro here. I actually loved the map for Tevi. I guess the map has gotten some negative criticism. I haven't heard too much about it, but some people were telling me, and I guess because maybe it's how like biomes are so clearly separated and there's these lines, going from biome to biome. It's not like a traditional looking map, but I think it looks really, really good, really crisp, easy to read, and easy to use. I thought the interface was just wonderful. And I really liked how they had like the game objectives on the side and just like, just cycle through them and you can see exactly where you needed to go. I'm not the biggest fan of Metroidvanias telling me what to do and where to go, but Tevi's a pretty big game and it's pretty open in the beginning chapters. And so I can see how people would like those objectives and why they wouldn't as well, kind of like myself. But anyway, I thought the map worked out really well in Tevi. Also thought the fast travel was really good. And I could imagine playing this game without fast travel, I would probably put it away. This game is just so big. And so it's great that they used fast travel and it works really well. And my last pro here is that Arena and Ribbon are in the game. 10 out of 10 S tiers. See you guys later. All right, the cons. First I have is side quests could have been more telegraphed. I guess there are some side quests in the game, and I don't even know if I did them all, but I did quite a few, and it all felt very random to me. The one where there's that angel guy who's like, obviously like abusing his power and going on vacations when he shouldn't, and he like ends up bribing you or something. I was able to complete that quest, and I had no idea it was even a side quest. Then there's that one character, the one I mentioned earlier, where you find her, and then she's like, hey, race to this spot, and I'll give you a thing, or whatever. She was just kind of placed randomly in the game, and there was nothing to tell you where she was at. Again, not a big deal, but when it comes to side quests, sometimes I like to know exactly what I'm doing, where I need to go, and things like that, because that's the point of side quests, right? But if you've ever played a Souls game, they don't telegraph their stuff either. Not that Tevi's a Souls game, far from it. Next con, we're going back to exploration, and this has to do with just it's just too easy. And what I mean by that is I'm really just talking about the enemies. So this is actually we're tying in combat as well. And so as the boss fights in Tevi are the highlights, the actual regular enemies as you're exploring are the I suppose lowlights. There are some enemies that can give you some trouble, especially if you go to a biome way too early. But by and large, most of the enemies in this game are complete pushovers. And because Tevi doesn't level up through traditional EXP, she levels up as you defeat bosses and open up the map, which is actually kind of cool. I don't hate it, but it just made fighting regular enemies absolutely pointless, especially because they were just so dang easy. Really, the only reason you would fight any regular enemies while exploring would be to get materials for crafting. But other than that, you can just like skip every enemy in this game because you level up by opening up the map and fighting bosses. And so with very little incentive to actually, engage in this game's combat, which you may have heard me say earlier in the pros, it really affects my enjoyment of that combat. Now, of course, combat against the bosses are really fantastic, but pretty much everywhere else in the game, you're just, eventually you'll just be like, I don't want to fight anything anymore, and just move on. And the reason that happened for me, this kind of like let me just get this over with, because the exploration in Tevi is really labyrinthine, or labyrinthian, basically meaning it's structured very maze-like. And that's never really my favorite when it comes to exploration. Of course, I understand it's subjective and you probably love it, and that's why I'm not like docking points or anything, but I thought it was worth mentioning. And I go over it like in depth and talk about like how there's too many one-way streets and stuff like that in my Metroidvania analysis video. So I'm not going to harp on it too much here. I just wanted to say that because I didn't really enjoy the maze-like structure of all these biomes level designs, I eventually would just get fed up and just skip all the enemies. Take that for what you will. My next con are the buffs and the debuffs in this game. There are just so many, especially debuffs. And you can get hit with like so many at one time too. But the worst part is that like, I could be wrong, but I gotta be almost right when I say this. Every boss has like its own kind of buff and debuff. So it buffs itself with some special buff, and then it debuffs you with some special buff. Which sounds all right, but it really interrupts the flow of combat. And so what I mean by this, basically, you don't know what these things are, so you have to like either pause the game and see what your debuff is, or read the text at the bottom of the game while the buff is active on the boss, which, as you can imagine, kind of sucks in a bullet hell. Again, these aren't big issues, but they kind of irked me, especially near the end of the game. I'm like, oh good, now what's wrong with me? I gotta pause the game and search through all this crap, and I got whatever the heck this is. I don't know, again, not a big deal, just something that bugged me a little. And this brings me to my big cons of this game, and that's the dialogue and the story. I'll try to keep it brief because I don't really want to go into spoilers in this game because I don't really think it's that big of a deal. But if you're really interested in spoilers, you can go to my Metroidvania analysis on Tevi, and I go a little more in depth. But really what I want to say is the dialogue in this game, there's just so much. Every character has so much to say, and every character has to say something at every interval. This absolutely just made me want to like gnaw my arm off. I just could not stand how much talking was in this game. And this may not be an issue for you. In fact, I had one of my frequent viewers say something around the lines of like he was referring to the Joker meme where it was like, Crazy Frog is this regular frog to me, right? Where this viewer said, when it comes to like games like this, a crazy story is just a story for me, which I totally get. Again, this is subjective, but for me, as like your regular Joe, I suppose, I just felt the dialogue was way too much and the story was just not where it needed to be. There's too many Deus Ex Machinas, there's too many plot points dropped, and then there's like this soap opera part that just comes out of nowhere and you're like, why is this happening to me? And I guess that's kind of how I feel about Tevi's story. It's not something I experience, it's something that is happening to me and it hurts. All right, with the pros and cons out of the way, what are my final thoughts on Tevi? Tevi's a really good game in a lot of respects. Presentation's top notch, and all the mechanics it utilizes work exceptionally well and add a lot to the game, such as crafting, the badge system, the combat with its dominant submissive states. But this game is not going to be for everyone. In my analysis video, I talk about the 5 hurdles you'll need to jump before you should consider playing Tevi. Hurdle 1, its boring story with too much dialogue. Hurdle 2, its furry aesthetic. Hurdle 3, its lack of platforming challenge. Hurdle 4, its bullet hell boss designs. And Hurdle 5, its 20+ hour runtime. If those aren't hurdles to you, then you should definitely check out Tevi. And with that, where would Tevi go on this list? Let's see. No, not a C. B. I'm going with B. B. I'm feeling B. Huh. Drop it for a second. Let's see. Okay. All right. There we go. There we go. I hope that's not too controversial for everybody. B is still a really good rank, even if it is a really low B. And I think I put it there because really, like this game doesn't motivate me or drive me to want to like do anything really. I just wanted to see what the next boss fight was. Everything in between I thought was just kind of there, and I just wanted to get past it, especially exploration. Not a big fan of the maze-like structures. Again, that's subjective, but what I will say is that exploration it didn't feel very fun, mainly because all of the enemies were just such pushovers. And I get it, this game has difficulty settings and you can adjust those anytime, basically. You just go to her house and sleep in her bed or something like that, and you can adjust the difficulty. But I don't know, I mean, even if the enemies were more challenging, would I want to fight them? Not really. I mean, do I want some crafting materials? That's the only reason you would fight any of the enemies. And because I didn't feel like fighting any of the enemies, my opportunities for combat were just much lower than what I would want them to be. Again, boss fights are absolutely solid, but there's like, I don't know, 20-ish in the game or something like that. And so just playing through the game just to reach the different boss fights, as you can imagine, isn't as engaging as you'd think. I think another big thing for Tevi is its platforming is just not very good. I didn't put this in the cons, and you know, that's an oversight. But I did talk about it in depth in the Metroidvania analysis I did. But the platforming in this game is almost non-existent, super unchallenging, and it really just kind of focuses on its maze-like structure. It wants you to, you know, have to circle back and try to, you know, keep all that in your mind, as opposed to challenging you with some sort of interesting platforming. And so that's a pretty big thing, man. You know, exploration isn't very fun. Combat isn't utilized to its fullest, in my opinion, because all these enemies are way too easy and they don't drop anything. You don't get any experience from killing them. There's not an incentive to engage in the combat outside of boss fights. And then the platforming just isn't great. These are like big things for Metroidvanias, but I still put it in the B for a reason. Its presentation is great. Its combat is really, really great too. I just wanted to want to use it more out and about during exploration. And its badge system is super, super cool. And let's not forget, even though I said I didn't like the exploration that much, it still wasn't the worst thing in the whole wide world. There's a lot to explore. This game's huge, and there's a ton to collect. And I would always get excited for badges. The potions, not so much, but they were still helpful. And so I'm sorry to Tevi fans, but I think this one's a low B, which I don't think is awful, but I don't know. You all let me know in the comments. And that'll do it for this episode. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening to me ramble on about these games. I know it might seem silly, but I'm passionate about Metroidvanias, and so this is what I do. As always, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have any thoughts or feelings about how the tier list is coming along or how I ranked something, please put it in the comments below. I'll take a look at that. I take every piece of feedback seriously, and I'm always amending this list. I really am trying to make the definitive list here. The list that everyone goes to and says, okay, I need to find my next Metroidvania. What's it going to be? And so I welcome all of your feedback and your critiques. All right, for real, that's it. I'm out of here. See you guys next month with part 10. And I'm hoping that you have enjoyed beating me down.